this first passage, making an argument, and the argument is that Schoenberg is awesome. We start with the funny quote, ha ha, you got us. Not really about Schoenberg, that was about Beethoven. And then, traces the comparison to Beethoven. So that's already starting off with saying Schoenberg is great. And then in the 4th, 5th, 6th paragraphs, all the reasons that Schoenberg is great. And the last paragraph, the real issue. And when the author tells you what the real issue is, listen to her. The real issue is not how it's made, but what it has to say. If Schoenberg hadn't existed, we would have had to invent him. Why? And this is the crux of the whole thing. It's not the 12-tone system. The seeds of that were already in Mozart, not Beethoven, sorry. What makes Schoenberg's music essential, I'm in line 50, is that he precisely delineated recognizable and sometimes disquieting emotional states. Some of his work remains disturbing, not because it is incoherent, although it may be all those things, but because it faces difficult truths. Schoenberg may be difficult as a musician, but he is also indispensable because he faces these difficult truths. That is what we just read. And if I were to turn to my friend Francisco and tell Francisco what I had just read, that's what I would say. So when we're asked for the main point, it is that Schoenberg is great, though difficult. Answer choice C, Schoenberg's music has not always been well received. It is worthy of admiration for its range, expressive range, and technical innovations. And notice how that covers all of the content of the passage and wraps it up in a neat bow. That's what we want from the main point. Question 2. Something that is disturbing the same way that Schoenberg is disturbing. Well, we said that Schoenberg's work is disturbing not because it is incoherent, shrill, and ear-splitting, but because it unflinchingly faces difficult truths. So we want somebody else who is disturbing because they are facing difficult truths. And that's what we've got in answer choice B, shining a light on aspects that many people would prefer to ignore. Question 3, why begin with that quote about Beethoven? Well, to give us the parallel to Schoenberg and to say that just because the critics don't like you doesn't mean that you're not great. Right? And Beethoven, and that's why you'd say anything about Beethoven, because Beethoven is universally acclaimed as being great. So anything at all you say about Beethoven, you're saying about the act of greatness, and that's what happens when you've got somebody with a universal acclaim. So why starting with that quote? To show that the critics don't know what they're talking about? Something like that, right? Because it's absurd to say that Beethoven is incoherent, shrill, and chaotic, and ear-splitting. So answer choice D. And notice how we can answer these questions by appeal to the text. D suggests that music that is at first seen as alienating need not seem alienating later. And we know that absolutely as a certainty because it's true of Beethoven. For question 4, this may take some time because it's just straight fetch information. But, we could really expect something like answer choice A as the right answer, by the way. When the passage is asked what the author said, what the question has asked what the author said about both people, probably the right answer is something that the author said about just one of those people. And sure enough, the late Romantic style, Schoenberg did that. Line 25. Never said Beethoven did. And the question isn't whether or not Beethoven did, the question is whether or not the author said he did. And of course, answer choice B, that's in that first line in that quote. C and E, both alluded to in line 11. Answer choice D, line 20. Like the author just said those other things. Question 5 is what we were talking about at the very beginning. When the author tells you what the real issue is, you listen to her. And what was the real issue? The emotional truths, the emotional states. Oh my God, answer choice D, the depiction of emotional states. For question 6, what does the author say? And here's what the author says about the 3 states of Schoenberg. Starts with the late Romantic manner, and then he takes that and pushes it until it has no tonal basis. And then he takes that and develops the 12-tone technique to bring order to non-tonal music. So there is a linear progression in Schoenberg's different movements according to this passage. A, each style represents a natural progression from the previous one. Start here, push it. Start here, push it farther. And you see how each one builds on the last. So we know for sure that that is true. And that's this first passage.